Today someone came in and told me that I was wrong for including Kyle Rittenhouse's name in a title of a video and commenting that he'd been arrested on 2 charges of murder. He shot at a bunch of people, fired 9 times, and killed 2 people. That's not the number of people he shot, it's just that's the number of people who died. The weapon he was carrying that night was legally provided by a Wisconsin resident friend. Therefore, any claim of him bringing it across the state line cannot be used as a basis for retroactively causing him to be guilty of a felony or committing a crime at the time for that reason. His age and or legality of arming himself is irrelevant as well, as any felony basis weapon charge or escalating this as a shooting while illegal is null as of August 28th, 2020, for the reasons I'm going to give. But the main one is, it wasn't his gun. He'd borrowed a gun. He hadn't transported across state lines. Him being under 18 may be unlawful. This is not a point that I'm going to argue. Let's claim it's unlawful, not what level. This is the law in the state that he was in at the time this happened, which is how the law is written up. Possession of a dangerous weapon by a person under 18 is unlawful. Yes. It may be a felony, maybe a misdemeanor. Depending on what city you're in, it could be different. This is one of the reasons I have a problem with laws concerning something that it is not unusual for a person to transport between locations. As someone said I was being an asshole and blah, blah, blah. And I respect the person's opinion, and the person himself, more importantly. So I'm just going to address the subject matter. The court may not consider whether the person had an opportunity to flee or retreat before he or she used force. It's a castle doctrine. They shall presume that the person reasonably believed that the force was necessary or they wouldn't have pulled the trigger. Unless you have really good evidence that the person is just running around trying to get in a fight. Now with Rittenhouse, that is debatable in my opinion, but that's not my place. I stated my opinion in the video. Someone didn't like that, but let's just square it off. That's an opinion. That doesn't mean it's fact. To prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself or herself, and also it should be included, other people, but under certain limitations. It's only in this ruling on law, on books, if it's going to happen to you. You're not allowed to defend another person unless you're dead-ass certain that they're going to die. It has to be imminent death, depending on what state or county you're in. Some places won't let you do it unless you literally see it as a direct threat. The reason for that is people have actually fired at an angle that looked like they were shooting someone, but they were shooting something behind them or in front of them. And someone got shot for it. So they were told, unless you dead-ass know exactly what you're doing, don't do that. But let's go on. And yes, a 90-degree angle is possibly the worst angle to try to shoot someone to figure out if you should. And that's where I kind of give cops and ordinary people a lot of leeway because I'm not in their head. It's a mistake, maybe manslaughter, but I'm not going to make the assumption. His attitude about this, other people's reaction to it, the politicization of the subject isn't fixing anything, on my part either. They shall presume reasonable belief that it was necessary to do so to prevent personal death or bodily harm. If you watch Rittenhouse running, do you really believe he isn't scared shitless? I can't say that I don't believe that. I would have to say that he was being chased by a mob after or before a shooting. We don't have all the data. It's amazing how all the video recordings just sort of only seem to be available from one group. Everybody should go to these areas where these things happen and put up a camera. You can see Antifa/BLM. It's actually just BLM people and random supporters stopping people from filming because they don't want evidence presented against them in court because they're all dead-ass guilty of shit sometimes. Okay? Let's be even Steven on this. If the person makes such a claim of it being bodily harm, you have to take it. But here's the next one. If the person was engaged in a criminal activity, then the presumption that they were reasonably believed that the force was necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself or herself isn't considered. And if the person against whom the force was used was in the process of unlawfully and forcibly entering an actor's dwelling, motor vehicle, place of business, it no longer applies. If you're out in the open, that last part doesn't apply to you. But it has to be that the person, it has to be that the person was engaging in a criminal act. The person firing the gun, if they were engaging in a criminal act, we don't have to presume anything. Now, this is about, obviously, them robbing a store, or even if they were in their own business, but they were committing a crime by laying in wait to shoot somebody. That's a high bar to go to. Somebody carrying a gun they were given by a neighbor or a resident, probably told, yeah, it's perfectly legal for you to carry a gun if you're under 18. I can't definitively say that this person should be convicted of the crime of murder. I can't. Because we're talking about technicalities. Did he cross lines with a gun? What if he walked into Wisconsin and assembled a dead-ass street-legal 26-inch steel pipe slam-fire shotgun? The number of shots he fired, he could have actually done that. He could have made one that's a 410. If it's a long gun, it's always a gun. It's not illegal. It's not concealable. That's the only rule that was ever really abused by the ATF. Local laws even say if it's visible. If they have a local rule that says you can't carry a weapon openly without having a concealed weapons permit, no matter what state you're from. In the state of Oregon, County of Multnomah, City of Portland, which I'm not in right now, I'm not allowed to open carry a lot of guns, most of them, except for, with a few exceptions, unless I have a concealed weapons permit. Not because I have to conceal it, but because I have to be willing to identify myself positively to the police force in the area and be a resident, preferably, and state that I'm willing to go through basically a background check to make sure I'm not somebody who should be prohibited. That way, if I'm carrying a gun, they just say, we need to see a concealed weapons permit. Here you go. That's an automatic background check was done as of that date. Unless they have wants and warrants, I'm told you're free to go. Have a nice day. And please keep it unloaded or keep the magazine out of it. And on that note, it's in your best interest highly to do what Rittenhouse was doing. Open carrying a long gun is not considered felony material. I consider it a little bit over the top, or more than over the top, but you can also see videos where he's not doing the standard substandard method of having it in low ready position. The video I did on this was rather early on about a completely different thing. I'll read off the title of it. Jacob Blake leaned to a car and got 7 cop back shots versus Trump cop simp Kyle Lewis Rittenhouse, who kills 2. And I stated, I consider him a murderer as of that date, because what he was doing was the same thing everybody else with the gun was doing, including actual Antifa, which not really very many do this, and the other liberal gun owners of America, or whatever they're calling themselves, that are basically the same thing, and Black Lives Matter people running around with guns. I consider it very provocative, dangerous, and it's like you're asking to have trouble. And both sides say that about the other side instead of saying, yeah, it should be against the rules. And in many cities, counties, and states, it is literally illegal for you to do that. Not because they're restricting your rights to keep and bear arms, even though that's literally an example of it, but because they've had shootings and they said you're not allowed to do that. We don't give a shit about your rights. You're not allowed to do that because people get shot. This is happening a lot. But when people get shot, then they start thinking they should carry a gun. I don't want to go back to Portland unless I'm armed with a 50 caliber 6-shot revolver now. And also, if I have the money and the placeholder location to live at, I'm going to be getting a AOW/SBR permit to carry a 12-gauge double-barrel pistol. Or I'll just build a black powder one and not even have to do a $200 tax stamp. Because if I'm assaulted by somebody carrying a Molotov cocktail, I'm going to take their head off. I'm not letting you burn me to death. I've already been burned and grafted a couple of times. I'm not getting shot again. That is the attitude I have. That will not happen. And I will make it to where I'm not defending myself. I'm punishing you into a submissive state where you never want to hurt me again. I don't care if it's a baseball bat or a Molotov cocktail. If you've been lit on fire, you know what I'm talking about, so shut up if you haven't. Or been shot. That's why I have a problem with both sides carrying weapons at these things, and that's why I have a big problem with people throwing Molotov cocktails. You know what's fucked up? One of the Patriot prayer groups was literally going around doing what I asked them all to do. Just shoot each other with paintballs. Make a joke of this stupid shit. If somebody points a gun at you, get behind cover, but hit them with a paintball. Make them pink and purple. And if they fire back when you're firing paintballs, that's excessive. That's escalating. Cops even shoot some of these people with paintballs, and they got shit for it. But they'll pull out a gun and follow you a couple of blocks and blow you away? That's another video I did. This has to stop. Every time I see something happening in Portland where they're literally destroying my damn town, all I think is, all of them go to jail for a month, and that's it. They're all guilty. It's an organized group. Stop it with legalese shit. Well, that's against that. They're not being released. That's it. We're done. We've had enough. Not because I'm an evil right-winger or left-winger, or even a gun rights activist. I'm not an activist. I explain to people how to get around the restrictions if they want to. I explain to people how to do this legally. I explain to people how to do this safer or safest so that you can do a good enough job that it would be indistinguishable from the intent and mechanical characteristics of a store-bought weapon if you want to make one, and how to do this to where you're not endangering yourself or others unnecessarily, and you can still go out and plant targets, because the majority of the time people are just shooting targets, not shooting each other. I'm not even saying it from that reference point. There is a practicality level beyond which you're not accomplishing your goal, and you're just giving a venue for people who want to go around and break windows, break heads, and steal shit. I want BLM en masse all to post the following. We admit that some of our members are rioters and looters, and then don't qualify it. Own it. If you're demanding that every single person who literally shows up, I'm not kidding, at one point, literally shooting you guys with water rifles, super soakers, to put out fires, by the way. One guy did that. They're not trying to kill you. They're not triggering you. They're squirting you with water and making fun of you. If that makes you more furious, then you've got a problem. And also that was also done, back at the conservatives, and they got mad. Because what are you going to do if somebody squirts you with water in the middle of July? Complain about it? Seems a little pissy, doesn't it? Can't take a joke? It's not a joke anymore. People are dying. But yeah, on Kyle Rittenhouse, what little information I had on that date, which, let me see if I can find it, I posted what I thought was accurate. It's an opinion. It's not a joke. Although my opinion is usually considered a joke. I don't have... Thanks, Google and YouTube, for not telling me the time and date stamp when it was posted. I'll include the information and link to it. The point I'm making here is I used the information I had at the time, and I compared and contrast two shooting incidents. One of them, I was also criticized over because the guy, well, yeah, he was exhausted, wandering around the car. Well, he'd been tasered and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but they still shot him in the back. And they didn't do what you do. What would work? Pointing a gun at a person and yelling at them, which isn't doing any good? Or just tackle his ass? Well, that's dangerous. Dead body versus you getting injured a little bit because it's part of your fucking job as a cop. Try being an unarmed cop, or just not a real bouncer. How about me just tackling somebody, trying to keep them from hurting my friend, and physically lifting them off the ground? I tore out muscles and stuff, but I prevented my friend from being hurt. Yes, there was a knife involved. He never saw it. I kicked it away. You don't have to shoot them necessarily. Why do you have to shoot unarmed people? Let's start there. Because that's what they're complaining about. Stop shooting them if they're not carrying a gun at the time or a weapon. Well, there was a knife. There was no knife found. There really wasn't. And cops have been caught lying about this shit repeatedly, too. We all need to solve this problem. Yelling at each other isn't working. But yeah, I made a mistake about Rittenhouse. A couple of them. But I still consider him to be a person who wanted to go there for some sort of conflict at the time. Now, I'm not necessarily sure. I don't know what to think, and neither do all of you. But he's not a hero. I don't consider him that way. But was it self-defense? Post your comments below. I'm going to open up the comment section. I don't know. You tell me. I don't think so. But that's an opinion of one guy. There's millions of us. I'm not important, okay? But I made two mistakes. Good day.